Welcome to BitBoy Crypto. My mission is to empower you to find financial freedom through crypto assets. If that sounds good, hit that subscribe button. All right, guys, let's talk. We got some really interesting stuff going on right now in the world of politics when it comes to Bitcoin. And, this doesn't really bode well, in my opinion, for what we could see next month in February from the Biden administration. The rumor is that after a February 8th Senate meeting on stablecoins, that later that month, Joe Biden is going to put out some executive orders on crypto. And I can't tell you right now I feel real great about it. Let me tell you why. I guess before we do that, let's talk about the price of Bitcoin just briefly here. We have stalled out in the $37,000 to $38,500 range. That's okay, as long as we don't go back below 35, 34K. Then I still, stand by what I said. There's a decent possibility that we are going to have another run here. People were not that scared off by the Fed comments, and in general, the price action just from a technical standpoint has been decent. Now we have stalled out. Eventually we are going to have to get over $40,000, but I think we could trade sideways in this range for quite a while. So let's just monitor, see where things are going. Kind of your target points are. If we go above $40,000, we're going to be very bullish. If we go back below 35K, then we're going to have a lot to be concerned about. Now let's talk about this. So first and foremost, you have to understand what this wallet rule is that is going, it looks like is going to be put up again to be an active law. Brian Armstrong, Uncle Brian, he tweeted about this back in December, I think, of 2020. So what happened is, as Steve Mnuchin was the outgoing Treasury Secretary, he basically put in all of these kind of decrees about crypto. And what happened is, when Biden took over in January 2021, they basically negated everything Steve Mnuchin did. So they put, anything that the Trump administration put in, the Biden administration basically squelched or squashed over the short term, as they figured out what they want to keep, what they didn't want to keep. Of course, it was all political, like, nothing Trump did is good, yada, yada, yada. So Brian Armstrong had a big tweet storm about this when Steve Mnuchin put this, I don't know if put it into law, put it into code is probably the more accurate term here. And this really reveals the government's inside plan, the way that they can actually, in the short term, remember, we're in a big war. A lot of these battles are going to be lost in the short term. But this is how the politicians and the governments and the centralized, central banks can win in the short term. Crypto is open source, right? So what that means is anybody can build on it, anybody can use it. But there's a lot of centralized companies that run things in crypto. Most crypto companies, Celsius, Binance, Coinbase, FTX, all your big exchanges, they're definitely all centralized. Then you look at a lot of the wallet providers, the Bread Wallet, the Exodus Wallet, those are centralized companies. They're just companies, right? So the way that they're trying to defeat crypto and defeat these wallets is to make it impossible for these companies to operate. So what that means is that you could actually, let's get into what this code says. What it says is that these companies have to have KYC for every person that uses their wallets. For the exchanges, it's a little bit easier. When it comes to these wallet companies like Exodus and Bread Wallet and similar companies there, Ledger, now if they're going to be required to have KYC, that means you're not going to be able to have any of these wallets anonymously. And a lot of people are not going to comply with this. So they're just going to send their crypto other places. But eventually the government will move around from place to place to make sure there's almost nowhere for you to put your money. The vast majority of people out there, they're using Coinbase, okay? Coinbase or Binance US. I'm talking about Americans, of course. They're using companies that do require KYC. Why? Because they want the convenience. They don't mind doing the KYC for the convenience. But that's like level 2 crypto ownership, right? Level 1 crypto ownership or custodianship would be like if you owned it somewhere on like PayPal or Robinhood, where you can't withdraw your funds at all. Level 2 custodianship would be where you have it on an exchange. You can send it to a self-custody wallet, but you can't actually, you don't have the private keys to those accounts. But the key is to get everybody to what we call a level 3 custodianship. This is where you actually own your own crypto. And a lot of these wallets where you own the private key, it makes it much easier for people to do this. But people don't always graduate to that next level. And so if something like this were to happen, And all of these wallet companies were basically either required to get KYC on their customers or shut down. And basically they would be, here's where it really gets tricky, is because if these companies have anyone that uses their wallets that has not done KYC, then they will get in trouble for it. The company will, not the people. The company will be in trouble for it. So like, let's say a company has 80% of their people KYC, well, 20% didn't. So now what are you going to do? You can't take their crypto back because that's not the way the custodianship works. So what do? You pay all these fines? That's a lot of people. And the government's plan is to kind of shut these companies down through doing this. And so here's the long and the short of it. Crypto is where, it started from a libertarian movement. It started for a particular group of people that wanted privacy in their transactions, didn't want to pay for government bailouts, yada, yada, yada. Those are still the people that drive a lot of the use in crypto. The more mainstream person has came in because they're interested in making money. They're not necessarily interested in, let's say, the greater movement of crypto or the greater movement of security and privacy in your transactions. Those people are still going to be okay. They're still going to know how to use other wallets, decentralized wallets that the government can't crack down on. But what this is going to do is it's going to shut down a lot of centralized companies in crypto that are doing good work and teaching people how to use crypto. And your average person is just never going to graduate to that other level of custody. And so if you think of FTX and Coinbase having control of most of the crypto out there, what does that say? What does that say about where crypto is in terms of decentralization? It would appear to me that they would be working to, kind of turn everything into a monopoly the same way our traditional banking system and, our fiat system works. And so this is the thing. You can't stop Bitcoin. You can't stop it, okay? You can't stop people from using it. But we don't want Bitcoin to be this underground thing where, a quarter of a percent of people know how to use it. We want it to be for everyone. And that's what a lot of these really beginner, user-friendly services allow for. And the government is coming after them. We just had old, no-telling Janet Yellen, old teller yeller, put down to pasture maybe. We just had her come out and speak out in support of this code or of this. It's not a bill. I don't exactly know what the technical jargon for the legal type of document or enforcement that this is. But the fact that she just came out all in support of this after we haven't seen her in quite some while, we have to be wondering, is this part of a larger plan? And if this goes south, if stablecoin regulation goes south, if this Biden executive order goes south, then it's going to be hard for Bitcoin to hold on. But not necessarily. We do see things like when people go after, whenever there's a school shooting and people go after, the Second Amendment, you actually see a spike. You see a rise in people buying guns and buying ammunition. Similar to what we saw with privacy coins when there were some Binance was banning Australian users from using privacy coins on their platforms, stuff like that. You actually saw an increase in price as more people flocked to those. But that's really temporary and short-lived. Those don't last for a long time. So it's hard to see Bitcoin, if all this goes negative, continuing up. I think that would play more into the 50-50 scenario where maybe we have already seen the top. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Drop your thoughts and comments below. I want to know what you think we should do to protect and preserve crypto for the masses. All right, guys, that's all I got. Be blessed. BitBoy out.